My daughter told me the lake house I built was too much for me now and that maybe it made more sense if she and Kevin handled it going forward. I didn't argue, I didn't remind her who paid for every inch of that place, I just nodded. Because in that moment, I understood something she hadn't realized yet. The lake house wasn't just a property to me, it wasn't just a place we visited during the summer or a nice view by the water. It was something I built slowly, patiently, piece by piece, during years when life didn't feel stable at all. And having something that was mine, something I created, gave me a sense of control I didn't have anywhere else. I remember choosing the land when it was still empty, standing there alone, imagining something that didn't exist yet, and everyone around me thought it was too much, too expensive, too ambitious, but I kept going not because it was easy but because I needed something that felt permanent. And eventually it became that. It became where we celebrated birthdays, where my daughter learned how to swim, where we spent quiet mornings doing nothing but watching the water move. And for a long time I thought those memories meant the same thing to her as they did to me. Maybe that was my mistake. Because memories don't always hold the same weight for everyone involved. Things changed slowly after Kevin came into her life, not dramatically, not in a way you could point to one moment and say that's when everything shifted, but in small adjustments, small decisions that started to feel less like we and more like them. Plans were made without asking me. Conversations happened where I felt like I was catching up instead of being included. And I told myself it was normal. That she was building her own life. That I needed to give her space. But space and replacement are not the same thing. The conversation happened on a random afternoon. Nothing special about the day, which somehow made it more real because life-changing moments don't always come with warnings. Sometimes they just show up in the middle of something ordinary. We were talking about the summer, casually at first, dates, schedules, who would be there, and then she said it almost like it was a practical suggestion, not something that would land the way it did. "Mom, maybe you don't have to come the whole time this year," she said. I looked at her, not reacting immediately, just waiting to see if she would adjust what she said, soften it, clarify it. He didn't. "Kevin thinks it might be easier if we manage things there ourselves," she added. Manage things. At the house I built. At the place that existed because I refused to give up on something when everyone else thought I should. I could have responded in 100 different ways in that moment. I could have reminded her of everything, every sacrifice, every decision, every year I spent making sure that place was something we could come back to. But I didn't. Because something about the way she said it told me this wasn't just Kevin's opinion. It was something she had already accepted. "And what do you think?" I asked her. That question mattered more than anything else, she said. She hesitated just enough to confirm what I already felt. "I think it would just be simpler," she said. Simpler. That word again. Soft, careful, but clear. And that's when I understood. Not emotionally, but logically. I was no longer part of the plan the way I used to be. Not because she didn't love me, but because her life had shifted. And I was no longer at the center of it. Which is natural. But how it happened, that's what stayed with me. I nodded. Not agreeing. Just acknowledging. "Okay," I said. And the conversation moved on. But I didn't. I didn't bring it up again after that conversation, not because it didn't matter, but because I had already understood what I needed to understand. And once something becomes clear, repeating it doesn't change it. It just delays what you already know you're going to do. The next few days I moved through my routine normally, calls, errands, small responsibilities that keep life moving, but underneath all of that, there was a quiet shift happening, not emotional, not reactive, just a steady process of reevaluating what that house meant now versus what it used to be. Because the truth is, places don't change. People do. And sometimes you don't notice it until something forces you to look directly at it. I drove out to the lake house alone a few days later without telling anyone, not because I was hiding it, but because I needed to be there without distraction, without someone else's version of what it meant. The road felt longer than usual. Or maybe I was just paying more attention. Every turn, every familiar landmark, every small detail that used to feel comforting now felt like something I was seeing for the last time, even though I hadn't fully admitted that to myself yet. When I got there, everything was exactly the same. The porch. The dock. The quiet sound of the water moving against the shore. Nothing had changed. And that was the part that made it harder because it meant the shift wasn't in the place, it was in the meaning behind it. I walked through each room slowly, not rushing, not holding on to anything either, just observing like I was seeing it from the outside for the first time, noticing things I hadn't paid attention to before, small imperfections, details I used to care about that didn't feel as important anymore. I stopped in the kitchen for a moment, the same place where we used to sit and talk for hours, where everything felt simple, uncomplicated before life started pulling us in different directions. And I asked myself something I had been avoiding. If this place no longer held the same space in her life, why was I holding on to it like it still did? That question didn't come with emotion. It came with clarity. Because holding on to something that no longer holds the same meaning for the people you built it for doesn't preserve it. It just delays the moment you accept it's changed. I sat on the porch for a while after that, watching the water, letting the quiet settle in, not looking for answers, just allowing the decision to form naturally instead of forcing it. And eventually, it did. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Just clearly. By the time I drove back home, I already knew what I was going to do. The next morning, I called a realtor. No long explanation. No emotional reasoning. Just simple facts. I wanted to sell. He asked a few questions: timeline, expectations, details about the property, and I answered everything calmly, like I was discussing something that didn't carry years of meaning behind it. Because by then, it didn't feel like something I needed to protect anymore. The process moved faster than I expected. Interest came in quickly. Apparently the location was more valuable now than when I first bought it, which almost felt ironic because just as it became more valuable financially, it had already lost its value emotionally. I didn't tell my daughter. Not during the listing. Not during the offers. Not even when I accepted one. Because this decision wasn't about her approval. It wasn't about making a point either. It was about aligning my reality with what I had already understood. A week later, everything was signed. Final. No undoing it. No second guessing. Just done. And for the first time since that conversation, I felt something settle. Not relief exactly, but completion. Like something had reached its natural end. 2 days later my phone rang. Her name. I answered. She sounded light at first, casual, like nothing significant had shifted, like the conversation we had was just a small adjustment, not something that changed the foundation of anything. "Hey Mom, Kevin and I were talking about the summer," she said, and I could already hear it, the assumption that things were still open, still flexible, still available. "We were thinking maybe you could come up for a few days, not the whole time but just to spend some time together," she added. I listened. Fully. Without interrupting. And when she finished, I already knew exactly what to say. I let her finish speaking without interrupting, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I wanted to hear the full version of what she believed was still possible. The idea that things could be adjusted now, that space could be negotiated after it had already been created. There was a small pause when she finished, like she was waiting for me to respond the way I always had, flexible, understanding, willing to rearrange myself to fit into whatever version of things worked best for her. And for a second I considered it. Not seriously. Just out of habit. Because that's what you do when you've spent years prioritizing someone else's comfort without questioning it. But that version of me had already shifted. "I sold the house," I said. No build-up. No explanation. Just the truth. There was silence on the other end. Not short. Not confused in a simple way. But heavy, like the meaning of what I said needed time to settle before it could even be understood. "What do you mean you sold it?" she asked, her voice changing, losing that light tone from before. "I mean, it's not ours anymore," I replied, calm, steady, like I was talking about something that had already been accepted. Another pause. Longer this time. "But why would you do that?" she asked, and now there was something else in her voice, not just confusion, something closer to urgency, like she was trying to hold on to something she suddenly realized wasn't guaranteed. I didn't rush to answer. Because the answer didn't need to be sharp to be clear. "Because you were right," I said, "it's better when people have the space they want." She didn't respond immediately. And I could almost feel the moment it clicked for her, not just what I had done but why I had done it, that what she said hadn't been a small adjustment, it had been a shift in position, and I had simply followed it to its natural conclusion. "That's not what I meant," she said quickly. And there was the correction. The attempt to reshape something that had already moved forward. "I know," I replied. And I did. I knew she hadn't meant for it to go that far. But intentions don't always define outcomes. Decisions do. "You didn't think it would change anything," I continued, still calm, still steady, but it did. There was no anger in my voice. No accusation. Just clarity. "You made space," I added, and I respected it. Silence again. But different this time. Because now, there was nothing left to negotiate. "I didn't want you out of it completely," she said, softer now. And for a moment I heard it. The part of her that didn't expect consequences. The part that thought things could be adjusted later. But some things don't work like that. I understand, I said. And I meant it. I wasn't trying to punish her. I wasn't trying to prove a point. I was just no longer willing to hold on to something that no longer held me the same way. We didn't argue. We didn't go back and forth. Because there was nothing left to debate. The decision had already been made. And it wasn't made in anger. It was made in understanding. After we hung up, I sat there for a while, just letting the quiet settle, not feeling empty, not feeling regret, just aware that something had ended, not a relationship, not love, but a chapter that no longer fit the reality we were living in. And later that evening, as I looked around my home, a space that belonged completely to me, not shared, not defined by anyone else's expectations, I realized something simple, something I hadn't fully understood before. Sometimes the hardest part isn't being pushed out of something. It's recognizing when you've already been moved, and choosing not to stay where you're no longer fully wanted. And in that moment, I didn't feel like I had lost anything. I felt like I had finally stopped holding on to something that had already let go of me.